Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Financial exceptionalism. Should America be different, or should we try to be just like everyone else? Hi, this is Shawn Akers, Dean of the Helm School of Government and Vice President for Middle Eastern Affairs with Liberty Counsel. Joining me today in studio is Deryl Edwards, President of Liberty Counsel Action and a Director with the Law School. We are in for Matt Staver today. Deryl, we talked a little bit about the national budget debt limit yesterday, and we're going to continue that topic today because you were able to find some fairly interesting research with a new argument that says, why are we worrying about this so much? Shouldn't we just up our debt just like everybody else? Because none of the other countries seem to worry about it.
Yeah, there's an article report that was released Monday by an analyst for Moody points out that the U.S. debt limit is an uncommon attribute not shared by most countries. And they say the U.S. is the only democratic country besides Denmark in which Congress has to approve borrowing separately from spending. Most other countries, the authority to borrow money is inextricably tied to the authority to spend. It's kind of a dangerous thing from our point of view. Whatever Congress says we should spend it on, the president gets to go do it.
You know, there's two very important points here. One is dealing with the minutia of the financial concerns that we have right now, but the other is a much broader, more principled question. We have seen, especially with this administration, and we have talked about it repeatedly, a move away from what the United States was at its founding and toward this European envy, this envy of what the rest of the world looks like and trying to make the United States look like other countries. You know, the fact is, Deryl, there was a Gallup poll done recently where 73%, this is no small portion, 73% of the American people that were polled by Gallup believed wholeheartedly that America is an exceptional place. They believe in American exceptionalism. And the thing that's made us exceptional for over 200 years is that we didn't do things the way the rest of the world did. That's why de Tocqueville came over and said, you know, I've got to figure out why there's so much liberty here, because you guys are doing things differently than the rest of the world. And one of those things that we've done, is, especially early on, is tried desperately, even though not always successfully, to build in a level of responsibility, especially with financial concerns. Now, when we're sitting here literally facing an August 2 deadline of wondering whether we're going to be able to fix our financial condition for a little while longer, these concerns have definitely come home to roost. I have to wonder out loud whether we should be emulating other countries here.
Well, I think there's a difference between Congress voting and a law passed to authorize to spend money. If there is a surplus, that money could be spent. That's fine. You need one step. No problem. I think people understand that. But if that causes you to then go borrow money, I can see there being a second step. Okay, we need to vote on the ability to go borrow money to do this. We've told you could do it, but we didn't tell you had to borrow to do it. Now, we need to review that again. Most businesses would operate that way. Most homes would operate that way.
That's right, but I think what we see in Washington is that everything is considered to be a blank check. Once you get the authorization, it's just time to go on a spending spree. And we've got some very difficult questions to ask. Now, as a real factual matter here, Deryl, you know, everybody is wondering, not just with this August 2 deadline, but even in the long term, how we're going to turn things around. It seems that Liberty Counsel and several other groups are starting with a very common sense approach here, and that is that there's going to have to be, with any compromise that takes place now or in the future, we're going to have to consistently build in more responsibility and more ability to bring the United States back into balance and keep it from getting itself into these extreme financial conditions.
Well, you mentioned balance. That's one of the terms I thought of earlier, and they're trying some of these reports that are coming out are trying to say United States is very different. You opened with the words American financial exceptionalism. Well, that's very true. I think when our founding fathers formed this nation, they used the phrase, they put in a phrase we use often now, checks and balances. The reason why they were distrustful of man being given too much power. They had seen what had happened to that under King George. They had seen what had happened under the European monarchies, and they knew that it could happen again. And if we're not careful, it would happen before our very eyes today. That's one of the reasons we have these checks and balances, because we designed a government that is somewhat distrustful of putting too much power into too few people. And we have the ability to not only rein them in by voting them out, but also that one branch is checking the other and double checks the other in a case like this.
And when you ignore those balances, you do so, those checks, you do so to your own peril. And where that's happened largely politically, Deryl, is that it's very popular to provide things. It's very popular to say, yes, I'll provide a service. I'll provide something. People get elected by promising what they're going to provide. The problem is you don't get elected by showing how you're going to justify it, how you're going to raise the capital to do that. So you find yourself in office just having promised all your constituents that you're going to do things for them, and now the question comes, how am I going to pay for it? And the choices are pretty clear. I'm either going to tax them more to pay for it, or I'm going to borrow to pay for it, or I'm going to print more money to pay for it. And each of those has a problem. If I say that I'm going to tax them more, they're not going to be very happy with me. If I say that I'm going to print more money, it's going to lessen the value of all U.S. dollars, and they're not going to be very happy with me. The most painless route to take is to simply do what the teenager does. Put it on the charge card and let the next guy worry about it, because the election cycle is still a ways off. I just got elected. That's what we've done over and over and over again. Now, there's a problem, though. Is sooner or later, the minimum monthly bill comes in, and you're not able to pay it. You've racked up so much credit card debt that paying off the total corpus, the total amount due, is just a dream. In that case, we're talking about $14 trillion in the United States. But we're at the place now where we literally are having trouble paying the monthly note. And that's the place where most individuals wind up having to file bankruptcy. That's where we are now, and the leadership that it takes is, one, selling some things that are very unpopular, making very difficult decisions to get you out of debt.
I heard someone saying a couple of nights ago on the news that even whether it's where we pass the debt ceiling or not in the next few days, that our credit rating, there's talk about, well, if we don't pass it, our credit rating will be damaged. Our credit rating is going to be damaged anyway, because there comes a point, you can keep passing debt ceilings forever. There'll come a point where credit bureaus and credit rating agencies that rate the U.S. will say, well, that's fine, you've passed the ceiling, but you can't afford to pay the debt that you've incurred to this time. And I think that's to our detriment. I mean, if the U.S. had a FICO score placed on it, I would sure ours over the past few years has been dropping. And when's it going to get down in the 500 range? And when's it going to get down in the 400 range? And no one will lend to us anymore.
Daryl, that is such a great, it's not just an analogy. I started to call it an analogy, but it really is very close to the truth. When individuals check their FICO scores, you look at it. You don't have to have been late with payments to blow your credit. What you have to do is have too much revolving debt.
Exactly.
If you have too much revolving debt, your credit shrinks. It just goes away. You get a horrible credit rating. That's precisely, even if we do, like you're saying, if we find a Band-Aid, it doesn't solve the problem. The only way to solve the problem is to live within our means.
Yeah, it's someone had said, it's like our problem is not the debt ceiling. The problem is the debt. And that's what we need to be looking at. It's increasing. As you mentioned earlier, we are electing a bunch of people who are trying to fulfill promises to people and make everybody happy so they can be reelected again. But there comes a time to pay the piper. Eventually, it's going to go too far down the road.
When we have people saying, literally fighting at this time, saying that we're just not going to cut spending, this administration has repeatedly fought back viscerally against spending cuts. It's that old adage. You remember they say that when you're digging a hole, if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is to stop digging. And what we've done is quite literally, as a nation, pulled out the bulldozer and said, not only are we not going to stop digging, but the way to get out of this hole is to dig more. Well, the image that drives up in my mind is that where you wound up as a young child when you imagine digging a hole was in China. And that's precisely, by the way,
that's where
you wind up here, is that
Yes.
we wind up owing everything to China. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to sit back and be silent while the United States Congress tries to dig our way to China. You can do something about it. One of the things that we would love for you to do is to call us at 1-800-671-1776 and request Matt Staver's book, Take Back America. It will give you tools you need to become more active in taking the United States back. It's for a donation of $12. You can request that book. That's 1-800-671-1776.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.